Fresh off the national championship, we're bringing you Jeff Foxworthy. He was there. He's showing off the G.
This was the shirt. I saved this shirt. I got to go to practice this summer, and Kirby gave me a little bag, and this shirt was in it. And so I'm really weird. Like in 2017, I had a shirt that I bought in the bookstore. I only wear it on game day. I was on a hunting trip, and I left it at home for the Auburn game. So, well, but it didn't take a defeat. So I had something else. So I wore it. So that shirt, the only play that shirt trailed for the whole year was to his throw in overtime. But because of that, and it had that blemish on it, I could never wear it again game day. So this summer, went to the bookstore, reloaded, got another new shirt, only wore it game day. It was undefeated until the SEC championship game. And obviously it got dirtied. It got spoiled. So it could never be a game day shirt again. But I had been holding this shirt back that was in the little bag Kirby gave me. And I had not worn it at all, still had the tag on it. So popped the tag, wore it to the Natty. And so forever, this is,
that is the one. It's the one.
And it will be retired. I mean, I'll never wear it again game day.
So you'll never wash it, right? Like it just has to stay as is.
Well, I did wash it for you guys. I didn't want to be on your podcast,
Oh, man.
All right, so how does it feel? How does it feel to be a champ?
Dude, you know what was so weird? And we drove up, my brother and two of my friends. We have the recruiting text thread. We have game day text thread. I mean, we're all in this together. So we drove up, and one of my buddies, Kyle Roney, said, I've never seen a stadium will a team to win like that one did. I mean, I never sat down except for TV commercials. I've never seen a game start to finish that you didn't sit down. People stood the whole time. I lost my voice, because every snap that Alabama had the ball, just trying to do my part, willing this team to win. So when Keeley intercepts the ball, I never saw it coming. I started sobbing. Dude, I just started crying, and I'm sitting there jumping up and down, hugging people I don't know, but I got tears. And I look around and I texted my wife. I said, I've never seen this many people crying at a sporting event. I mean, just openly crying. And you realize that's 41 years of pent up, coming close, thinking this is going to be the year. And it was, it's like the dam broke. It just all got released. And, I'm standing there screaming to no one, we won the Natty. We won the Natty. It was just fabulous.
So what was your viewpoint? Which was he going away from you? Was he coming at you?
Oh,
was he on the opposite side of the field?
Perfect seats for the fourth quarter. So we're on the Georgia sideline in the end zone where AD, Keeley, that side, so perfect seats for the fourth quarter.
So he was coming right at you.
Coming right at me. Yeah.
That's so then you saw.
And I got to tell you, Dayne, was it you that put together the video of the 25? Nothing for the people that weren't fortunate enough to go, nothing captures that moment better than that compilation video. I mean, it's just from all angles that people, it's like they lost it. It's like the dam broke.
How many times have you watched
that? Was the moment you realize, holy crap, this is going to happen. We just won the Natty.
Let me take.
So how many times have you watched that video?
I've watched it all the way through 3 different times now. So but I will go back and watch it. That is a new generation's Lindsey Scott play, I think. I mean, for all the great plays within that game, that's the one that is going to live in Georgia lore forever.
Let me take you back to earlier in the fourth quarter, though. So when the call happens, and I'm sure in the stadium, when Stetson has the fumble, and when that's ruled, I'm sure that review felt like it took years off of your life. What's your feeling in that moment?
The weird thing was, I don't think anybody, including Alabama fans, thought it was a fumble. I mean, you just thought, oh, he almost got sacked and he threw the ball away. Nobody. And so when they went to review it, you're like, come on, dudes, let it go. And then the longer it went, I went, oh, crap, it's happening again. Here we go again. This is what happens when we play Alabama. Just shock. I mean, somebody threw a beer can that hit the lady in front of me when they made the call on the field. I mean, it hit her in the head. Mm-hmm. And you're like in shock. You're like, man, we've been willing this thing the whole time, and you're going to take this game from us on a rinky-dink call where the guy that recovered the ball didn't even think he was recovering the ball. It just a low thinking crap. But man, we answered so fast. And once we started moving back down the field, it was a different feeling. I mean, the whole game pivoted right there.
Do you have
the 80 Mitchell touchdown?
Do you have jokes in progress for Stetson Bennett, like into routine at some point? Because I mean, this guy, Georgia legend now,
forever a Georgia legend. And I was trying to be, me and Kyle Rooney were trying to be positive. We just kept looking at each other from that morning going, everything's falling into place. Everything's falling into place. We're not going to be negative. My brother and Brent Burns were getting a little more negative, especially when Brent got a couple of cold beverages in him. He started to be, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. We're going to be positive. I had to do on the drive back Tuesday to Atlanta, I had to do a true confession, because I said to myself, if we end up losing this game because of that fumble, golly, I hate to even admit this because it sounds so petty, but I had to come clean. I had to confess. God says you have to do that. I made a vow to myself, kind of like Baltimore. I was never going to say Stetson's name out loud again for the remainder of my life if we lost the game because of that. But that was a moment of weakness for me. And Stet answered the bell, came back with just some beautiful throws. And so now I get to say his name forever.
So how does that feel like in the stadium? Because it wasn't like Georgia was, all right, we're going to run, pass after that. It was come out, chuck it, get the P out of Burton. Like every play on that drive was a pass play. So
every play, you got the Burton on the sideline. Then you've got Kenny McIntosh, who is so undervalued as a receiving running back. Kenny McIntosh is going to be a demon in the league because he catches the ball so well. And then you have the play, and we saw Bama jump off sides. It's right in front of us. We were right there on the 40, and we're all yelling free play, free play, and you couldn't have thrown that ball any better. And AD's adjustment to the ball, fantastic throw, fantastic catch. And, that's some of the rap on Stat, because I said later, if JT had thrown that ball, you'd have been going, you can't throw a football any better than that. With Stat, he doesn't get that kind of credit and leverage. And it was a fantastic, he immediately knew he had a free play. He knew there was no wavering where he was going to go. Makes a great throw. You get a great catch. And, at that point, you're starting to think they're not quitting tonight. They're like in the past, when you felt the game starting to slip away to Alabama, it felt different. It's like, it ain't slipping away. They're not quitting. They're not throwing in the towel. And then you hold them to a 3-and-out, and then you come back and you do it different. Now you're playing Kirby ball. That O-line's leaning on them. I mean, just leaning on them. And Zeus is just running it down their throats. And you're going, man, that front line D line of Alabama, they don't want it anymore. They're getting pounded right now. This is Georgia football. So it was kind of cool to see the traditional Georgia football and the untraditional. I mean, like that little lollipop to Bowers. I'm like, what a great call. What a stinking great call. So, we don't have the kind of offense Alabama has. We don't have these super elite guys on the outside, but we do have something. And I saw, Dayne, like last night you had, the thing about Lawson Lucky. And I'm thinking this morning, are we also going to become TEU? Because I think we might be using tight ends as good as anybody in the country right now.
Definitely. Beyond the shadow of a doubt. So then now, so the Bowers touchdown happens. Bama's got the ball. How are you feeling? Like how is the vibe around you? How are you feeling as Bama starts to drive a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, they got a couple of third downs. You're optimistically nervous, because it's 8 points, and I keep telling myself they still got to go for 2. If they get it, they still got to go for 2. And certainly didn't see a pick 6 coming. In fact, this is how cheesy I am. So I got a hoodie. I got my Georgia hoodie on with the little pouch. So at the end of the game, I'm picking up confetti. I got my bag of confetti, and I'm going to frame a photo of Kirby jumping and Keeley high pointing, and I'm putting that confetti all the way around it because for me, and I saw Lindsey Scott. I watched Lindsey Scott on TV, but that to me is the defining play of my lifetime as a Bulldog fan.
How do you compare what just happened to what you witnessed in 1980?
This is a true story. So in 1980, I'm working dispatch for IBM, and they offered triple time on national holidays. They only needed one person in the entire office to answer calls because they said nobody's going to be calling in for a broken machine on New Year's Day. So I volunteered for the triple time. And now in 1980, I had a Philco television, and you guys are too young to remember this. TVs were like 3 feet deep and 3 feet wide. I mean, and this freaking television must have weighed 140 pounds. And so I drive downtown to Colony Square. I'm the only car in the parking lot. And I get this 140-pound TV, and I'm walking across the parking lot, get on the elevator, and I towed it upstairs, and I put it on my desk. No cable, no antenna. Thankfully, we lived in the age where you could still get reception. And I watched the national championship, Georgia and Notre Dame, on that TV on my desk. Yeah, by myself, celebrating, and then lug that TV back down to the car. So that's how I did it the other time in my life when we
got triple time pay.
And didn't have to answer a single call all day long. So
speaking of calls, what's your phone look like since early Tuesday morning? Because, I mean, if you want to drop some names of people that reached out to you, I'd love to hear
it. Brent Rollins, David Pollock, Davey and I were kind of laughing because we were both crying, and both of us didn't see it coming, And I think David does such a great job. I think David's fantastic at his job, and it's very hard to sometimes, I think early on David tried really hard not to be viewed as a Georgia homer. And so there was Georgia fans like, oh crap, he hates the Dogs. I'm like, you don't know him then. He freaking loves the Dogs, but doing his job, he's being professional. He's not, but Davey's in tears Monday night. It just meant so much to so many people. I know as much as it meant to me, it didn't mean any more to anybody on the planet than Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart loves Georgia, and Kirby's right. It's those guys that were up at 5 a.m. running the stadium stairs and working out and all, but it's also those people that got in their cars, and there were a ton of them, and spent money they didn't have to drive to Indy. It's people that went to the bars wearing their T-shirts and sweatshirts. And I mean, this just meant something to generations of people. And, you know, I know at the end of the day, it's just sports, but it's bigger than that, man, especially at UGA. It's tradition. This is how we do this on a Saturday. These are the songs I cracked up because we stayed in Louisville because hotels were so sold in Indy, but we're cracking up laughing at St. Elmo's restaurant that the police got called in, and you watch the video of who's that coming down the track, and I'm like, oh my God, Georgia fans are getting the police called on them in a restaurant for calling the dogs. But it meant so much to so many people, and it was just such a relief. And Brent, you know me, I'm always like, who are we talking to for the class of 2023, for the class of 24? You know, I'm like a recruiting, and I just decided I ain't looking at it. I ain't looking at it for 2 or 3 days, and I'm just going to, like sitting under a warm waterfall. I'm just going to soak in this feeling and let it bathe over me. And then I'll go back and, you know,
be the neurotic recruiting guy.
Be the neurotic recruiting guy again. Sure.
I mean, you already told on yourself though, because you asked about Lawson Lucky. So yes. I don't know that you're actually.
Well, that was my first peak, you know, after the Natty. So yeah.
You mentioned Kirby. How you know, just speaking to him and doing it his way, kind of, you know, with the defense first mentality. The offense obviously was very explosive, but it was still, I think the team was very much of his identity. Speak to that?
Yeah, you know, I think it was, and I think some of it was personnel. You know how sometimes it just works out that way that I thought it was so big, like when Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis said, we're coming back. You know, it reminded me of like Davin Bellamy and Chubb and Michelle going, we're coming back. And you're like, man, this is the kind of that, because I think great teams usually have great upperclassmen leadership, you know, the juniors and the seniors. So, and they were so stacked on defense. And I think that just played right into Kirby's hands. And we live in an age where it's almost like, as you talk about football, whether pro or college, nobody talks about defense. It's all offense. You know, the college football has just almost become Big 12 football. I mean, just sling it and don't play defense. And so I thought, wow, this is really unique in a year where it's all offense, that you got one team that is so good and plays such great defense. And after the SEC championship game, that really rattled my brother. He's like, that one gut punched me. But everybody was talking about Stetson. You can't win a natty with Stetson. Stetson's not the guy to win a natty. And I said, you're viewing this wrong. I said, if our defense, which going into the SEC championship game and was allowing 6.8 points a game, I said, if they had given up triple their average, that would have given Alabama 21 points. Well, we scored 24. We still win the game. They didn't give up triple. They gave up 6 times their average. I said, so this isn't about stat. This is about, can we get back to playing defense the way we had the previous 12 games? Because if we do, nobody, Michigan or Alabama, is going to beat us if we get back to playing that kind of defense. And good Lord, you've got Dan Lanning, you've got Schumer, you've got Will Muschamp, you've got Kirby. I mean, you've got some defensive geniuses on that side of the ball. And they went back to playing that defense. And that's the defense, even in the first half when we looked so hapless on offense, the defense kept us in the game. Alabama goes inside the 36 times during the game and comes away with 1 stinking touchdown. What would you have bet that would have happened? Man, once they got into the red zone, we locked down.
Yep. Forcing the field goals was basically the key to the game.
So you play the first half and you're like, man, we just can't figure it out offensively. And we're down 3 points. We can't play any worse offensively, and we're down 3 points going into halftime. And then I thought, you don't hear much about it, but man, I think when they moved Jamari to right guard, that's almost like a Tua move. I mean, Jamari had been playing left tackle the whole season, and you make that big of a change on your offensive line, but we got better fast after that.
And run the ball a little bit more in the second half.
Yeah.
Start to sort of be physical in the second half. It was definitely a performance there. You mentioned about going to practice, and I think you said it was in the summer. Was there anything that stood out to you that day? We're like, okay, this is going to be completely different this year. This is a completely different vibe.
Yeah, that they were, and I'm so blessed. I know I'm so fortunate to get to go to practice once a year. And I think about football practice like when I was in high school, and there was a lot of standing around and waiting. There ain't no standing around at a Georgia practice. I mean, there's not a wasted second. You're running from one drill to the other. Bam, horn sounds, you're off to do something else. All of a sudden, Kirby screams, 30 seconds. You got 30 seconds to kick a 41-yard field goal. And whoever's on field goal teams run into the middle of the field. I mean, to feel that pressure of having to get something off. And it's always been intense. But this year, it just felt like it was different. Like they were on a mission. There was no joking around. There was no it's like they were locked in. And we made that comment driving back to Atlanta from Athens that day. It's like, man, this team's like, they're like business. This is like they are on a mission. And, I thought you saw that carried out throughout the year. They had each other's backs so well. I felt like the defense all year was like, whatever you do, we got your back. I thought a big play in the Natty game was when Alabama came down and they do that. It's third quarter, I guess, but they have that 17-play drive, and we're not giving up big plays, but they're third down on us and third down on us. And I looked at my brother and I went, crap, this is too many plays. Our defense is going to get gassed. That's the Alabama way. We've all lived through that before, that your defense, and they run 17 plays. We hold them. They go to kick the field goal, and Jalen Carter blocks it. And I looked at my brother and I went, they just had 17 plays and walked away with no points. That's huge.
And
I heard a little
back to the Rose Bowl, how the block kick. I mean, it completely changes momentum because
it does, man. It's a huge play. It's such a big swing, and I mean, to me that just said this dog they ain't giving up this time. And that would have been easy to. They had to be gassed. 17 plays and let Jalen and man, you want to see a play? Go back and watch that in slow motion. Watch that play in slow motion. The effort that he had coming through, squeezing between the snapper and the guard there. I mean, just all out effort. It was amazing.
When you think about the effort.
Flash forward to October, and you and I are just walking around a hospital, let's say with Piedmont or something. Are there more baby Stetsons or more baby Ringos?
Well, I don't think you could go wrong either way. I think Keely's probably going to become a very popular name. Stet's going to become and God bless the kid. God bless the kid. And anybody that wants to hate on Stetson, go look at him crying on the sideline. You want to know what it meant to him? Go look at him crying on the sideline. I mean, if he ever buys a cheeseburger in Athens again, shame on you.
Anything for that matter. Round of golf, cheeseburger. He should never have to touch his wallet again for the rest of his life.
My idea is that in the parade on Saturday, he needs to be in a mail truck. And if it doesn't happen, then someone at athletics has really failed us all.
I 100% agree. We even talked about coming back. Where do we get mailman hats? Where, is there a place you can buy a hat from the U.S. Postal Service? Because I would love to get one and have Stet sign it. I'd put it up on my shelf there in the back, the mailman hat, because he's stinking delivered.
Are you buddies Wayne Knight? I know he's a Georgia guy, so maybe he could reprise the Newman character who was supposed to work.
Yeah, I actually am. We used to film right next to Seinfeld, so I would see him quite often when I was out there.
Well, there you go. If you put that online, and all the Georgia people will flock to it, I promise you. Get him and Stetson together.
So now that it is here, and now that it is a thing, who's your guy for the 2022 recruiting class?
Yeah, you mean out of the class we just landed?
Yeah. Who's your guy? You got to have a guy. Who's your guy?
Michael Williams, probably. I mean, he went out and dominated in the All-American game. That I think we're going to look back and go, holy cow, that kid from Columbus was committed to USC, and we kept him. I think he's going to be a star. You know who makes me laugh? Julian Humphrey may be like LeCount on this team. He has such great tweets. I loved his tweet last night with a show of Keeley catching the ball and Kirby high pointing, and he's got an arrow, and he goes, "Who wouldn't want to play for this guy?" I thought, dang right. I'm excited about this class. It's funny. I was sitting there this morning going through like the dog vent and all, and you see like people are already panicking over the portal, and Kimber leaving. And I'm like, well, it's the age of football that we leave in. And I think if we learn nothing else this year, and we're not going to do it because we're fans. We love to gripe about stuff. We love to second guess stuff. But kind of for me, I'm like, kind of like Alabama people do Saban. I'm like, I trust Kirby. I trust Kirby knows what he's doing. Kirby took an unbelievable amount of grief for sticking with Stead over JT. Fans, reporters, national analysts. And then you get to the end of the line and go, dadgum, Kirby knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. And so, whatever happens in the port, I trust Kirby. He did it last year. When we had the mass exodus of DBs, and he goes and gets Tyke. So I trust where, he's going to find the people. And it ain't going to be 41 years before we have this conversation again.
I would bet that's true.
Well, and, a lot of people were saying that look at how much you're losing on defense, probably 9 starters and then some other guys that don't start. There's no way that can happen again. Look at the schedule next year and then look at the talent on Georgia's roster. You don't know anything about what can happen next year because it could be a repeat where they can miss out. I could see either scenario. None of that really matters right now other than I'm sure Kirby's about to drop a line saying he feels so, bad about being 10 days behind everyone else on roster management.
He's already said that. Dayne, he's already said that. Well, that's the problem we're playing in the Natties. It puts you 10 days behind everybody else. I'm like, give it a rest, Herb. But I don't think it's possible. I think this defense, it's the best defense I've ever seen in my lifetime as a fan. Just hair on fire. And it wasn't like it wasn't like it was Roquan and it was just one guy that was that fast and close. There were so many, that Trayvon Walker running down the wide receiver. Go watch that play. Trayvon gets knocked to the ground on the line and gets up and run down to the field and catches the wide receiver from behind. This defense was so fast. Nola Smith's playing like his hair's on fire. Nakobe, Channing Tindall. This was a special defense, but I think we're reloading. I think there's a lot of good guys coming back next year. Jalen Carter's still there. So I think we might take a little step back defensively, but I think offensively, we've got a chance to take a step forward. So maybe the Bulldogs of next year look a little bit different. Maybe we're a little stronger offensively, might give up a few more points, but we might score more points. So
you mentioned Kobe Dayne and Channing. You mentioned Dayne and Tindall back to back, and I thought the emblematic play of the national championship on defense, other than Ringo, that's the play everyone's going to remember. In the red zone, when Channing Tindall misses his assignment and Kobe Dayne covers for him and forces the incompletion and immediately gets in Channing's face and say, "We can't do it that way," or whatever he says.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's almost like Kirby. He's like teaching. It's like, no, you got to do it this way. And what happens the next play? The next
gets
play,
in the backfield.
You've got Bryce rolling to his right, and Channing hawks him down. Now, in the SEC championship game, Bryce breaks that tackle. In the Natty, Channing brings him down, So, yeah.
And I think when you're talking about big legacies, and I thought this 17 and 18, I left saying that Andrew Thomas was one of Georgia's best 10 players ever. Now, maybe that's my youth and not having seen a lot of these best players ever. But, man, Nakobe Dean's right up in that conversation now, too.
Did you think after Roquan left, I thought Roquan was a generational linebacker for Georgia. I didn't think this soon afterwards. And, God, I love you. Talk about a damn good dog. Nakobe Dean, character, intelligence, heart. I mean, he was the heart of that defense. Forever in my life will love Nakobe Dean. Fantastic player.
Just think of all of the sort of DGDs that you're going to have from this team. I mentioned yesterday on Twitter, William Poole played more snaps in the last 5 games than he played in the previous 4 seasons.
Yes.
And then had the game he had in the Natty.
And William Poole had one of the best plays in the Natty when he goes to break up you can't play DB better than that, where he breaks up that pass coming across the middle. William Poole, by the way, from Hapeville, which is where I played my football, Hapeville High School. So shout out to my homeboy there. But you're exactly right. William Poole, who had the blown coverage in the SEC championship game that allowed Williams to run wide open, and comes back. And all right, here's my question for you guys. If you had it to do all over again, would you want the undefeated season, or was it sweeter because of what happened in the SEC championship game?
Regardless of what would be wanted, I don't think it's possible without that. I don't think that Georgia is as hungry without that loss. So I don't think you get the national championship, feeling without having gone through that disappointment in Atlanta.
I agree. And I also think that, and you heard the players talk about this after the game, was the conditioning that they did the moment the SEC championship game was over until the national championship game. All the running, all the conditioning that they did to get, because you had guys play more snaps than they ever have, especially along the defensive front. And you just don't get that if you walk through and just trounce Alabama in the SEC championship game, beat them by 10, 15 points, something like that. You might not get that. Now, you still might be undefeated because you don't play anybody else that's good enough to beat you talent-wise, but you don't get it had to come to me. You had to beat Saban. It had to come beating Nick Saban. I think that made it the most poetic justice of all time. Yeah,
and you said that early in the year. You said I want it to be we need to go through them, and I agree with you. My brother said back when it happened, he said, one of the worst things for us was finishing the year with Charleston Southern and Tech. He said because we weren't pushed at all, and you guys, I'm sure, felt like I felt as I watched the SEC championship game. I'm like, who is this team?
Yeah.
Who is this? This isn't us. And of course, you've got the national media. And I said at the time, Alabama played by far their best game of the season the same day Georgia played by far their worst. And so when you hold it up like that, I mean, the gap is huge. You go, oh, crap, Alabama, the national media was, Bama's this much better than Georgia. And I'm like, no, they're not. You're reading a false indicator. That's their best the same day as our worst. If we play our best and they come back to us, it's a different story. And, I think, when you were watching the Michigan game, I don't know how you felt. I had in that first quarter just exhaled and go, we're back. This is us. This is Georgia again.
It definitely looked the part.
Yeah.
They looked the part.
And they won the game Monday night. That defense, God, what heart, man. Those guys, and they were on the field. You got used to during the season of, by the third or fourth quarter, you weren't seeing Trayvon or Jordan Davis or people in the game. You're sitting there going, who's 96? These dudes were on the field all night Monday night.
Two things on the Ringo pick six. And I think some people have noticed them, but from a storytelling standpoint, they're pretty interesting. So Bryce Young, when he tries to make a tackle on the pick six, winds up right beside Kirby Smart.
Yes.
And who picks him up off of the ground? Kirby Smart. Same guy that after the game says that's the best player in college football. So that's one of the things. The other thing is once Ringo gets to about the 10-yard line, who's sprinting beside him to get the last block that you need?
Dan Jackson.
None other than Dan Jackson. And he gets lit up.
He got volcanoed. But God bless him, man.
He probably didn't feel it at all.
I think he landed on his feet somehow. I don't know how. Maybe it was just the energy of the moment, but he was down on the ground for like a quarter of a second, popped right back up.
I saw where somebody said instead of Kirby helping Bryce up, he should have squirted him in the face with a water bottle and then high five Pickens. But Dan Jackson, I love Dan Jackson. Dan Jackson's to me kind of like that lad McConkey. He's got twice as much heart, as he probably initially had talent now. And they're both extremely talented. But I love the heart of that kid. Just barreling down the field. Who can I hit? Who can I hit? And that was a car wreck on the 4-yard line. But
well, and by name alone, he doesn't sound like an SEC safety. He sounds like a guy. Just his name sounds like a guy that's an opening act for you.
No, you're absolutely right about that. But he's a DGD.
So did you sleep at all? Did you get to sleep at all? Did you actually, or how did that work after the game?
All right, this is when you have a problem. So as I said, we're staying in Louisville. So we're probably in the stadium because we soaked it all in. We wanted to get showered with confetti. We watched the trophy presentation. So we leave the stadium. It's like 1, get to the car. Apparently they played in Indy because the stadium in Siberia was booked. It was so stinking cold. So we get to the car, and of course you've got that. Anybody that goes to a Georgia game knows that crawl, till you can get to the interstate. So by the time we get to Louisville, it's 3:30 in the morning. We get up to our hotel room. I'm sharing a room with my brother. He goes in, immediately turns on ESPNU, and we sit there and lay there in bed eating potato chips, watching the fourth quarter of the game again on television. I'm like, we have a problem. We just saw this live, and it's 4:00 in the morning, and we're laying in bed eating potato chips watching this.
Did you still fist pump and do that when AD caught the ball?
Yes,
you still did it.
So we slept about 4 hours and got up, and it took us, I think it took like 6.5 hours to drive to Louisville, but they had like 4 wrecks. So it took us 9.5 hours to drive back. But we listened to 680 The Fan, local, wanted to get the local thing, listened to Neuheisel. But the thing we were really holding out for was to listen to Feinbaum because we knew all the Alabama callers had gone into hibernation. All these people that called every day, because we had made a vow. We said if Georgia loses, we're not watching Feinbaum. I'm not listening to that. But they kind of disappeared. So,
did you see Al Duncan on Feinbaum?
Yes, God bless Al. Yes, and showing up like in her bathrobe to do it. But yeah, that was awesome. I was happy for her.
Coach Donnan was on Feinbaum yesterday, and I'll tell you, just being able to sit and we do the watch-along show with him and enjoy the national championship game, because the context, earlier that day, Champ Bailey was announced as a college football Hall of Famer. And then that night, Kirby Smart wins a national championship. Wow. And so two of the most impactful players of Donnan's era at Georgia, guys that were so big for UGA, and obviously, decades later, are guys that help build whatever this is. He gets to sit there like a proud papa and look at it. And that was really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of fun when you just eat and breathe this stuff and you're going back and you're throwing out questions, and one of them was, so does this make Kirby the greatest coach ever at Georgia?
I mean, right there, right? I mean, if you're measuring by titles, then he's tied for that. And if you go amount of time that it took, and then you go what's the program's trajectory from here? Because I don't think anyone would say this is going to be it. I mean, if you had to place the bets there, no one's placing the bet at one and done.
No, it is. You've because of recruiting, is all of a sudden you realize. I mean, even though Saban had a young team, because of the way they recruit, you still got a shot. You got a good shot.
It's recruiting, but it's the infrastructure and salesmanship too. I mean, that was the first thing that Kirby did, was get in these boardrooms and say, y'all got to invest in this deal. And it's stuff that Mark Richt was saying at the same time too, but it was just all the confluence of events at the right time to say, if you want to do what Alabama's doing right now, then we have to change things differently, on the inside. And that happened.
Well, and a lot of props to McGarity, because Mark Richt is one of my favorite people. I love Coach Richt. That had to be really hard for McGarity to let Mark go, because he was tired of hearing people say 10 wins isn't enough. We want it all. And I think for him to go, all right, if you want it all, A, this has got to happen, but B, you got to open your wallet, and we got to be able to compete facilities wise. And it happened. I mean, good God. I mean, I was walking through the new facilities, and Rennie Curran said to me, I've been in every NFL locker room in stadium. I've never been in anything that nice. The Georgia people responded. And I'm sure I'm biased. I don't think there's a better college football fan base than UGA. We travel. I don't know if you ever heard numbers, because we were speculating at the game. I mean, early on we were going, this ain't 50-50. This is, what is it? Is it 65-35? Is it 70-30? But the Georgia fans are as great as anybody. And, that's the only thing in my life. I went to Georgia Tech because I had no money and I had to live at home. God, I would have loved to have gone to Georgia. And thankfully, people don't give me crap about going to Tech, because I have loved Georgia all my life. And people have allowed me to jump on the Georgia bandwagon. But I've been on it since I was a little kid. I remember sitting there with my granddad. By the way, the pose I got now, the Cobra, we made a vow as a group. We weren't doing the Cobra at the game. That's when you've given up, is when you do
no surrender.
The camera would have found you. You would have been on ESPN. Like, would have found you.
Yeah, they would have found me. But, even though I never went there, I love UGA. I love the fan base. I love the tradition, just everything about it. And so thank you, dog fans, that you don't give me crap that I went to Tech. Tech kicked me out, but it doesn't matter. I didn't give a rat's butt.
Hey, if you want to come get your journalism degree, let me know. I can make some calls.
I was thinking, that's weird you say that, Dayne. I thought this morning, man, if my life had been different and if I had the money to go to Georgia, what would I have majored in? And I thought, yeah, it'd probably been journalism. So yeah, tell them to give me an honorary. Tell them to give me an honorary degree, because I don't have a degree from Tech. So if they would do that, then I could be a dog. That's my heart's cry. I just want to be a dog. So
I mean, this spring graduation, you speak at graduation. That happens. I'll talk to Josh Brooks, and he can talk to the right people.
They give me the diploma to go with the rest of the class.
I mean,
everyone else is just there for your ceremony.
I would cry again, just like I did at the Natty. I would cry again.
Hey, Mr. Moorhead, he's probably going to be listening to the podcast. You know, he's going to see that. We'll get it to the right people. We're going to make that happen. All right, let's get you out of here with two things. One, how much merchandise have you already bought? And two, what is your sort of lasting memory of all of this?
All right, I did go online last night. I got 2 short sleeve T-shirts, 1 long sleeve, 2 long sleeve T-shirts. So I didn't buy a sweatshirt. So I've only bought 4 shirts. And my wife is going, half of your wardrobe is UGA stuff. You've got to get rid. She said, it's fine that you're buying new stuff. You've got to get rid of some of the old stuff. But I won't.
Some of that old stuff
I wear a Georgia shirt or hat almost every day of my life.
Is some of that older stuff from the first national championship?
No, it's not quite that old, but I mean, I've got some that is just banned to yard work because you've worn it so many times where the pit stains don't come out; they're just kind of permanent. Yeah, I've got some pretty nasty ones.
Speaking of them, have you seen the ones that the people that have that drank the Coke bottle from 1980 that down the that one? I've seen some of that. That's
I heard about somebody doing that. It couldn't have been good, could it?
I mean, I hope not. I would think not.
No. Wow. Oh, that's cool. I mean, that's what I'm telling you. That's this fan base. There's no other fan base that loves their team like Georgia does.
You might be a crazy redneck fan base if you drink a 41-year-old after a national championship.
And you might be hanging over the toilet about 4 hours later, giving it back. So I just can't think that's good for you.
Jeff, if you want to plug anything that you're doing before we get you out of here.
I'm at the Fox Theater, February 5th, my favorite place to play in the world, with tons of new material because with COVID, I went 1.5 years without getting on stage. So, I've always said, I don't think laughter makes people's problems go away, but I do think laughter, it's like the release valve that keeps the boiler from exploding. You kind of laugh and then you're like, all right, I can go back and deal with whatever I've got to deal with. And I think that's the one thing over the last couple of years with this pandemic is it's laughter and it's live music. That's kind of those releases for people. And we had neither. So people have been carrying all this stress. And so what I'm finding now is when I'm doing shows, I'm just kind of shocked by the number of people that come back after the show and go, oh my God, I can't remember the last time I laughed like that. I needed that so bad. And I'm like, yeah, we do. That's the thing that keeps us sane is blowing off some steam, whether it's laughter, live music, or hell of a football team. Those are the things that give us the whatever to keep going, keep walking.
I expect people will be calling the dogs with you on February 5th at the Fox Theater. That's what I expect.
You know what? We should call the dogs. Shouldn't we do that at the Fox?
100% should be. I mean, I would assume that you come out and the whole crowd starts barking like crazy.
I have never got to call the dogs in my life. I think I'm going to do that at the Fox. All right,
I'm just producing your show for you, man. I'll expect the royalties.
Listen, you guys are coming. Seats are on me, but you gotta help me call the dogs. All right.
We're there. We're there.
Jeff, as always, you've been so gracious with your time, and we're really fortunate to be connected to you, and really thrilled that you got to experience this firsthand. And you're as big of a Georgia fan as I've ever encountered, and just hearing your story, we appreciate the time you made for us.
Well, Dayne, and we were kind of figuring out, maybe you guys have an idea. I said the other night, I said, how many Georgia fans do you think there are in the world? And I have no idea. I mean, it's a hypothetical question. But I said, all right, say there's 4 million. I think it's higher than that. My brother thought that was an accurate number. But just say 4 million for the sake of the argument. And if there were 40,000 of us at the game, I understand how so blessed I was to get to go to that game. It's because 40,000 out of 4 million, if you do it on the calculator, it's 0.01% that actually got to be there live. And it's so funny. I'm like an old dude. I watch games on TV because I like the replay and I like not having to stand in line at the bathroom and all. But I said to my wife, we were headed down to my farm on Thanksgiving. I said, I never say this. I said, if Georgia goes to the Natty, I want to go. And she goes, oh, you should. She said, when is it? And I said, I think it's January the 10th. And she pulls out her phone and she looks and she said, we're in Machu Picchu. We were supposed to, my oldest daughter had always wanted to go to Galapagos and see the giant tortoises. And it was her 30th birthday. So we had booked this trip like a year and a half ago. And January 10th, we were supposed to be in Peru at Machu Picchu. And at Christmas, my oldest daughter got COVID. She's fine, but she got COVID and we were supposed to fly out like New Year's Day. So we had to cancel the trip. And when they canceled the trip, and when my wife said you're in Machu Picchu, I literally, I almost started crying. I didn't say anything. I just drove silent for 20 minutes. And I'm like, so you're telling me that if we go to the Natty, I'm going to be in a third world country with an iPad, hoping they have internet, trying to watch this thing. And so when the trip got canceled, I kind of, said to my wife, so does this mean I can go to the Natty now? And she's like, yes, you should. So I think it was God ordained that I got to go.
Divine intervention.
But I will remember it my entire life. It's for a lifetime sports fan, it was the greatest day of my sports life.
So you went and hugged your daughter and you said, I'm so glad you're okay, but thanks for getting COVID for this.
I love you, Joy. And she's a dog too. So maybe she was giving me that as a gift.
It all worked out. You're the best, man. We appreciate you. And we'll do this again sometime. And on the 5th, we plan on seeing you then, hopefully.
We will see each other then. Then we'll start really talking recruiting after that again. So, but thank you for
a couple guys out there.
Yep. God bless.